Mediators and officials from Israel met today in Qatar, as I mentioned. The purpose was to have an intense negotiation to end the war in Gaza and to return the hostages that are still being held by Hamas. And of course, all of this comes on this, the third anniversary of the fall of Kabul, which many believe set a pattern for the Biden administration's inept handling of foreign policy. Also, closer to home, Columbia University President Manu Shafiq resigned. All this comes following widespread criticism of her handling of the pro-Hamas student protest on the campus of Columbia. Well, joining me now to discuss this process and much more is Congressman Tim Walberg. He serves on the House Committee on Education and Workforce, as well as the Energy and Commerce Committee. He represents the 5th Congressional District of the great state of Michigan. Congressman Walberg, always good to see you, my friend. Welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, Jody, it's great to be with you. It's good to see you. It's also good to see you're doing very well.
Well, thank you so much. And likewise, listen, we've got a lot to discuss here, Congressman. It's kind of like where in the world do you begin? But before we get to the latest news, let's start with this. As you are well aware, today is the 3rd anniversary of the fall of Kabul. All of this happening on President Biden's watch. Is it fair, in your opinion, for people such as myself even, to draw the timeline that this withdrawal, the disastrous withdrawal that it was, actually has set a pattern, if you will, of foreign policy of this current administration?
Oh, absolutely. I'll never forget, I was in Ukraine from Lviv to Kyiv to Odessa over the Orthodox Easter, pretty much after the start of the war. And after the fall of Kabul and our terrible, horrific, as well as embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan, leaving American citizens there, as well as supportive Afghanis who had stood strongly with us and with our troops, leaving there, in some cases, to die. And when I was in Kyiv, talking with military soldiers of Ukrainian army, they brought that up. They brought that up as a concern of how it was perceived in the world and what the strength of the United States would be. And at that time, we were negotiating in support against Russia and for Ukraine. I think we've seen it go on with Iran. I think we've seen it go on with China. All who saw the weakness of our country and its policy as lived out when a withdrawal was expected, when President Trump had planned for it, had negotiated the means by which the Taliban would respect our withdrawal, that we would keep forces there, that we would hold the airfield, and that we would have eyes on the ground still in that region. That all changed with the election of the present president, who immediately after being sworn into office showed a weakness, and it blew up full tilt during the Afghan withdrawal. We went out.
It sure did. Yeah, Congressman, and just to, I guess, put an exclamation point on what you're saying. I don't know if you were able to see the role that we had even while I was talking, but over $80 billion of U.S. military equipment was left there. I remember you and myself and many members of Congress were screaming about this. And I remember General Milley saying, well, it's too expensive to bring all that stuff back. And now our enemies have possession of those pieces of equipment and using it against Israel and us and who knows who else.
And the technology that's there, I saw some of the vehicles that were built in my district being paraded across that field today. No, this is evidence. This is an evidence of what the world thinks of us, specifically those enemies of freedom, of democracy, and of the West. And again, we are the big Satan in the eyes of the radical Muslims, and that begins with Iran, who indeed will foster what goes on with the Taliban and others against the United States. And this has to change in our elections soon to take place. We have to go into that wide-eyed and understanding that we can't negotiate strength anymore. We have to prove it.
Yep, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. You know, for 3 years now, we've heard the Biden administration push the narrative that Vice President Harris was a partner in all these major decisions. In fact, here's how Vice President Harris responded to the disaster back in 2021. I'm going to play this clip.
But there's no question that what many of us have seen on television, as the president has said, I mean, the president has, I think, shown great emotion in expressing sadness about some of the images we have seen. But we cannot be in any way distracted in any way from what must be our primary mission right now, which is evacuating people from that region who deserve to be.
All right, so she was part of all the major decisions, they say, and there she was supporting this decision to evacuate. But now she is attempting to avoid any accountability. Your thoughts?
Well, she can't get away from that if we get that message out. That is her belief. That was her beliefs back then. Now, Jody, I don't believe that she or President Joe Biden were running this country or have been running this country. There's a cabal behind them with an initiative to change this country from the inside out. And that also responds to the whole globalist desire, which will not work. America has to be there at the top of the heap. We're the only nation that has the power and the potential and the moral clarity, if we use it, to define what takes place in the world, not build nations, but rather demonstrate what a true constitutional democracy and freedom is all about. This president and would-be president, Kamala Harris, they don't understand it the way we do. And because of that, America will be hurt with them at the helm.
No question about it. If I can just go a little bit further, somewhat of a different topic, but same general ballpark. Israel, of course, remains on high alert for an attack from Iran. And today, Hamas refused to join the ceasefire negotiations. Your thoughts and reaction to that?
Well, when you don't have the strength of purpose coming from our White House now, and the negotiation potential, and an unwillingness to really stand foursquare with Israel, you know, the vice president chose to go to a sorority gathering.
Yep.
And speak there as opposed to being there on the floor. As you recollect, you were there when Netanyahu spoke one time. I was there again, and I heard a man with moral clarity call for America to join. But if we didn't, Israel would stand alone against all of the nations that would want to destroy them and the United States and the West, to speak of the rest of the story. So this is a concern. And to think that Kamala Harris, who even the media were deriding just 3 weeks ago, is beginning this honeymoon with the potential of becoming commander-in-chief of a weakened force, not because of our troops, but because of the leadership. What that says to Hamas, why should they negotiate? What that says to Iran, why should they stop their nuclear development? What's that says to Russia? Why should they keep their incursion and taking over countries? And certainly, what does that say to China? That has said very clearly to us, they will dominate the world, including America. We need to believe our enemies and stand up strongly, and that means who we pick for a leader. And I'll very clearly state, it should not be Kamala Harris or Tim Walz, but it should be Donald Trump.
Yeah, these are unbelievably uncertain and frightening days. And this is the time to, what we say around here all the time, Congressman, is to pray, to vote, and to stand. And all of that takes place at the ballot box. Congressman Tim Walberg, I always enjoy talking with you. It's been an honor to be a friend for a long, long time and continue that relationship. We appreciate you coming on Washington Watch. Wish we had more time. I'd love to get into Columbia University and the resignation of the president there. I know you were right involved in so much of that. But unfortunately, our time has expired. Congressman Tim Walberg from Michigan, thank you so much for all you do, and thank you for joining us today on Washington Watch.
Thank you. God bless you, Jody.